TCU Professor Kirby Alexander, thank you so much. So we're doing this story about in the Dallas ISD, they say that they are 13 to 14,000 students short on their projections. They have not signed up for their virtual classes. They haven't attended them. And so what do you make of this?
You know, it doesn't surprise me. It does surprise me that it's that many students, but when I think about how many students in the area could have issues with access or just lack of resources, it's not surprising that there are a lot of students who have a hard time um, logging in, getting into their virtual learning platforms. It also, I think, is not surprising given the fact that there are some students out there and families who just, maybe don't value school, so they maybe have moved, they're not in the area, so, and didn't tell anybody, right? So I just think that it's unfortunate, but it doesn't surprise me too much.
And what about, I mean, we're looking at other districts today.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen, for example, in Fort Worth ISD, they are about 3,300 students short from last year on the same day. They're at 94% of their anticipated enrollment this year, where last year at this time, they were at 98% of their enrollment. And, we've looked at other districts, and so far the numbers that we've seen, if you're in a suburban district, it hasn't been as big of an issue. In Frisco, they're still growing. In Denton, they're only about 350 students short from their projections. So what does that say? This is really a bigger, more urban school district problem?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I just think that the larger the school district, the more difficult time they're going to have keeping track of their students. You look at a suburban school district that may have, an eighth or a tenth of the amount of students as a large school district like Fort Worth, and they're just going to not have as many to keep track of. So, just in terms of numbers, it's a lot harder to keep track of that many students. And then, you also get in a large urban district, you get a lot more variability in terms of access to resources and other types of resources like parent availability or language barriers or parents' ability to even help their kids navigate the school environment. So all of those issues are going to be compounded in an urban school district just because there are so many more people, and every issue is then going to be magnified even a little bit more.
So what is the short-term impact and long-term impact on these students educationally?
The short-term impact, if you just look at just between what happened in the spring and now, it's probably that the students starting school right now are starting a little further behind than they normally would have, because there's a typical amount of growth that you can anticipate throughout a school year, from where a student starts and let's say June when the school year ends. Well, that growth was interrupted because suddenly, we find ourselves in an academic emergency where we're having to do emergency remote teaching from home. And, all the school districts are kind of left scratching their head and trying to figure out, how do we address this? And a lot of these discrepancies in availability of resources suddenly come to the forefront. So the growth was interrupted. So students didn't make as much growth as they normally would have in a school year. Now they've had a longer break. So you're going to see more of a slide than you would normally see in a summer, over a summer break. And so now they're starting at a place that they normally wouldn't have started when the slide started, and it's been a longer slide. So, in the short term, you may be looking at students who, in terms of their growth, maybe about where they started last year, because they've been out of the school environment for so long. Another short-term issue that I think this might bring up is that there's going to be more variability in terms of what students are coming to school prepared to do, because in a typical school year, the typical curriculum kind of aims toward the middle of student abilities. So you always have some students who, are going to struggle, some students who may be advanced and ahead of what the curriculum is anticipating they can do. Well, some students aren't going to have that slide. Maybe their parents were able to keep them involved in academic activities. They continued reading, they did enrichment activities, that kind of thing. So now you've got even a wider variability between the students who haven't done anything since, let's say, last March, and those who have kept growing, kept learning in those months that we've been trying to stay socially distanced from each other, and schools haven't been opened. So now teachers are faced with, what's the new middle in the curriculum, because there's potentially going to be a really wide range between student ability because the break has been so long.
And what do you think, because of what you're saying, what do you think the school districts need to do to try to reduce that variability in student knowledge and performance, perhaps? And, what do they need to do to get the kids back up to where they should be?
Right. Well, the first part of your question, I really think what school districts are going to need to do is be very intentional about determining where every student currently is in terms of their learning. They're just going to have to do a lot of, assessment, diagnostic assessment, and just really figure out where students are. So I think they're going to have to be even maybe more intentional than they have in the past. I think every school district probably has done some of that throughout history of taking the first couple of weeks and just doing some review and figuring out who remembers what and that kind of thing. They're just going to have to really be intentional about that. And when it comes to academics, it's just like anything else. It's just like exercising your body. The longer break a person takes from exercise, the more work they're going to have to put into it to get back up to a desired level of fitness. And so I really think that students, that schools, families are going to have to put in the extra work to get themselves back up to where they need to be. I wish there was an easier solution or a magic bullet that just say, if you just do this, then it's going to get you back to where you need to be. But I really think it's just going to take hard work. Another way to think about it is they may just have to give extra time. Just say we have had this national emergency come to the forefront. It really affected the work of schools. So we may have to rethink what we're expecting students to be able to do right now, and maybe kind of readjust the timeline so that it gives students who need that extra time to get caught back up the time they need.
And I was just wondering, when I talked to the superintendent of the Dallas ISD yesterday, Dr. Hinojosa said that the district did start testing everybody. And by the end of the month, they will know where everybody is and how far students have fallen behind. And then they will go forward from there. So it sounds like they're doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned the term academic emergency. Are you talking about the situation that we're in, just everybody in every school is facing an academic emergency because they haven't been in person? Or is it a situation where the students who have not shown up, like in Dallas ISD, is that the academic emergency?
I would say it encompasses both of those and maybe even more factors. I was using it in terms of the academic emergency is just the fact that we were suddenly kind of all put into an environment that nobody was really prepared for. Even the schools that provided computers for every single student, I think they were finding that they weren't using them in the way that students could then direct their own learning. So yeah, it's an emergency in terms of the curriculum just being kind of ground to a standstill. It was an emergency in terms of the environment being different and trying to suddenly, in this desperate situation, trying to figure out how to carry on with school-related business when you didn't have a school building to go to, and the teachers weren't in the same room as the kids. And then, of course, as you said, there's this emergency then that now schools who provide critical services for students through nutrition and academic services and counseling and sometimes social work services, they're not being provided anymore. And now you have students who just disappear and you don't know where they are. So it's an emergency in that it's easier to not be at school. You know, before they don't show up to school and you can follow up through emails and phone calls. And it's a small enough percentage of your student body that they can do that. Well, now you have a lot of students who, for different reasons, just don't show up to school, because showing up to school means logging into your computer, and they may not have the ability to do that. And so, yeah, it was an emergency, I think, in just a lot of different ways.
And again, you know, when I told you, when you saw the numbers, at least in the Dallas ISD, being, you know, 13 to 14,000 short, not, you know, lower than projected, and even Fort Worth, 3,300 students.
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
You know, my initial reaction was, I really hope those kids are located and plugged back in to their educational experience. Honestly, I just think that, you know, you'd asked earlier about the long-term effects on students, and education in our country is a pathway to success. It's a pathway to better careers, better life. And I feel for those students that are missing out on that opportunity to be connected to that pipeline that could provide them with a better life. And I really hope that the school districts, that the schools can find a way to find those students, to get them plugged back in and to get them back on track, because there's just such a crucial link between education and lifelong outcomes.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Professor, and your insight in all this. Is there anything else that, A, we should be asking these districts, but B, in the short term, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
You know, I just want to encourage every teacher, just keep doing what you're doing. Students are relying on you. They love you, and I know you love them, and just keep doing your amazing work, and don't lose heart. This is a tough time, but I just know that for every teacher, you've got what it takes to be there for your kids.
All right. Well, very good. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And your comments will appear in our 6 o'clock newscast today.
Okay. Are you editing that out, or is it just going to be pieces, or just the whole thing?
Yeah. What we'll do is I'm going to just, you know, cut up portions of what you said.
Okay.
But what I've been doing lately is, particularly on these bigger stories, is I will have them include your entire interview.
Okay.
And so we will put that on our website as well. It'll be
okay. Gotcha.
in the body of my story.
Okay. Perfect. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you again.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.